Howdy everybody, let's work with symbols and tweening in Flash. So I'm going to start off with the brush tool over here, and I'm going to draw something. Looks good. Alright. And I'm going to fill that up with the paint bucket over here. Okay. Good enough for right now. I can go back and fix this later. Alright, so I'm now going to select this whole thing by clicking and dragging around it. And then I'm going to go up here to modify, convert to symbol, or F8. And I'm going to give this a name, and static. And then I'm going to have the type be a graphic, and just because I'm thinking about it, I'll center register it right here. Okay. Alright. So you'll notice right away that after I've converted into a symbol, we have this bounding box around this. There's a center registration point, and if I go to try to erase this using the eraser, it will not let me erase it. Alright, let's take a minute and think about what we have just done. Let's unpack this a little bit. So remember, we drew something, and then we went up here and converted it to a symbol. So what is a symbol? Well, a symbol is an object that once we convert it into a symbol, once we make a symbol, it lives, so to speak, over here in the library, which is up here in the library palette, over here. If it's not there, you can find it up here under Window, Library. And what we'll see over here is a list by name of all of our symbols. We have a grand total of 1. And we'll see a picture of that symbol up here. So for purposes of our definition, we could say that a symbol is a master copy of an object that is kept in the library. Now here's the magic of symbols. Once you have a symbol in the library, you can drag and create multiple copies of that symbol out on the stage. And you can delete copies of the symbol on the stage, but the master copy always remains untouched. So we have a special name for a copy of a symbol. A copy of a symbol is known as an instance. And another way to put it is that an instance is a copy of a symbol. Alright, so let's go into the instance idea a little bit further. An instance has its own set of properties. So each one of these is a unique object. So I can go up here to the free transform tool. The shortcut for that is Q. And I can change the rotation of an instance. I can change the scale of an instance. And we've already been changing the position of these instances on the stage. So what we'll notice is that each instance has its own properties. So those properties we'll be working with are position, rotation, and scale, which we've just shown here. And we'll also talk about alpha and tint. Okay, so what is alpha? If I drag my instance on top of something in the layer hierarchy, it blocks it out by default. But if I'm dealing with an instance of a symbol, I can go over here to my properties palette and I can choose color effect. And under style, I can choose alpha. And I can now control the transparency so that I can reveal what is underneath. So 0 would be completely transparent, invisible, and 100% is completely opaque, and everything in between. Tint lets us control the actual color, hue, saturation, and value of the object. We also have brightness, which controls the dark light tending towards white or black of an object. And you also have an advanced setting which lets you control alpha and the RGB values as well. Okay, just to clarify here, clear this off. Changing a particular instance properties has no effect on the other instances. So these are separate objects. And this is a very important idea. So changing an instance's properties does not affect other instances or the symbol itself. But changing the symbol, as we will see, will affect all of the instances of that symbol. So let's take a look at how we can do that. Okay, so let's go ahead and edit our symbol and see its effect on these instances out here. So if I go over to my library and I choose duck static, before I do this, just notice over here in our upper left hand corner it says scene 1. Scene 1 refers to this object, this stage that we've created, and also this timeline down here that we've been working in, and that's scene 1. But if I go over here now and I click on duck static, double click on it, it changes. It takes us into this empty white space that doesn't have any boundaries on it, like the stage. And if you look over here on the left, it also shows you that we are now in duck static itself. We're actually editing the symbol itself, and that is contained in scene 1. So now any changes I make here will register on all instances of the symbol in the scene. So if I click on scene 1, it's going to take us back, and sure enough, our ducks now have these perforated heads. Now I should be able to go back into duck static and undo those changes and go back out here, and they're changed back. Now one really cool aspect of symbols is that you'll notice down here in our scene 1, we only have one layer, but the number of layers in your symbol does not have to match the number of layers in your scene. So all I'm going to do here is I'm going to go out here and create a new layer, drag it to the bottom of the stack, and I'm going to select a color here. And I'm just going to, whoops, that's the eraser. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to select a color, and I'm going to select the brush, B, and then I'm just going to go and color this in. And because it's on a separate layer, you can see how it can be kind of sloppy, but because the top layer is 100% alpha, it will block that out. I've just colored in the eye. So now if I go out here to scene 1, all of my instances register the effects that I've made on the master symbol. So that's the first way we know how to edit a symbol, which is to double click on the symbol and jump back here into duck static. Now there's also there's another way to do it which is very handy, and that is to edit the symbol through an instance on the stage. And so if I double click on any one of these instances, it's going to gray out everything else, and it's going to drop us into symbol editing mode. And this can actually be very handy sometimes. I probably wouldn't do it here, but in this case, but sometimes it's exactly what you need, because it lets you make changes to the master copy of the symbol. We're in duck static, but it lets you do it relative, so you have the stage position as a reference point, and sometimes that's very handy. So you can see that I'm actually editing the symbol itself, but it's affecting all the other instances of the symbol out here. And so to get back into scene mode, I drop back in here into scene mode. Now, one question I get a lot is, okay, great, these are all the same. What happens if I want to make one of these slightly different than the other ones? Well, the short answer is that you're going to have to make a new symbol and swap it with the old instance. And I'll show you how that works. So I can go up here to duck static. I could right click on it and say duplicate. Now it's going to make a copy of this in my library. So I'll call this duck static copy. Okay. And right now it's going to look exactly the same. It's an exact copy of our original symbol. But now if I go into edit duck static copy, I could change, whatever I want here. I could change the color. Let's say, select all this here, change the color. And now I'll have a new copy here. Okay. Of duck static copy. Now it hasn't affected anything in the scene because there are no instances of it on the stage yet. Now I could drag new instances out there if I wanted to, but I don't. Let's say I wanted to change just this to reflect, to be an instance of this new copy. Well, with that instance selected, I can go up here to Properties and choose Swap. And I could swap it out with this new version. And the nice thing about it is it keeps the rotation and the position and the scale of the previous copy, instance copy. So you don't have to resize it or get too fancy with it, especially if you do that right. So now, this is now an instance of the copy, this is an instance of the original, this is an instance of the original. So these are now, this does not have any connection to these. So if I go in and make further changes to duck static, say I'll give him some horns here or something, it only affects the duck static versions, not the duck static copy. Okay, there is actually one other way to do this, which is actually even more kind of powerful in one way, and it's the idea of working with nested symbols. Nesting symbols within symbols within symbols. So let's play around with the idea of nesting. I'm going to delete all these. So nesting is basically using instances of symbols to create other symbols. Using instances of symbols to create other symbols. Good times. Okay. So I'm going to go into my library and I'm going to do some edits here. I'm going to make a copy of duck static, who kind of has this little neck and Viking horns, by going duplicate. I'm going to change this to duck head. Okay. I'm going to go into edit duck head. I'm going to delete all this. And I guess I'll delete the horns, even though they're kind of cool. Make a couple quick edits here. Awesome. And It'll give him some hair. That's kind of sweet. Alright, cool. Alright. So that's our duck head. And now I'm going to think about what else could I do with this head. So let's say I wanted to have two ducks, each with different bodies, but having the same head. This is where I would use nesting. So instead of doing all this copying and pasting, I can also start off by just making a new blank symbol. I can say insert new symbol, and I'll call it, let's say, duckman01. So now it's just a totally blank symbol space, duckman01. And now here's where we're going to start nesting. I'm going to drag a copy of duckhead out here. I'm going to make another layer, drag it to the bottom, and I'm going to draw a body on this guy. Very nice. Okay, so there's our Duckman01. So I'm going to drag a copy of Duckman01 out here and hit Q and scale it down. Whoa, don't want to do that. Scale it down here. All right, so there's Duckman01. Now I'm going to go and create another new symbol, insert new symbol, and you guessed it, I'm going to call this Duckman02. It's totally blank. I'm going to drag an instance of duckhead out here, and now I'm going to make a new layer, bink, down here, and draw another body on him or her, I don't know. It's kind of skinny. Alright. And that looks pretty great. Alright. So now I can go out here and drag a copy out here of Duckman02. Scale that down. Okay. But now these are both using instances of the same, nested instances of the same duck head. So if I go into duck head and edit this instance, maybe I'll get rid of the hair, and I go back out here, it has affected all of the nested instances out here. So nesting is a very, very powerful way to create more complicated characters and to work with more kind of complex character designs. So make sure you take the time to really play around with the idea of symbols and instances and nesting. Get really comfortable with it so it becomes second nature, and just have some fun. I mean, I can just spend days doing this kinds of stuff, so without even getting into any movement. And just remember that each instance has its own position, rotation, scale, and also alpha and all that. And we're going to be changing those properties, position, rotation, scale, and alpha mostly, over time, and that process is called tweening. And that's what we're going to cover next, in the next video. That you can change these instance properties over time to create animation, and the computer is going to interpolate that. It's going to figure out all of the in-betweens, and that's where that word comes from. But I'm getting ahead of myself, so we'll see you in the next video.